to know. So today we have Mr. Christensen, member of Dawson in the Liberal National Party of Queensland. Mr. Christensen is proudly pro-life, raising his voice to protect the voiceless in Parliament. In August this year, he introduced a bill called the Human Rights Children Born Alive Protection Bill, and he'll explain more about that today. Thank you very, very much for joining us, Mr. Christensen. How are you?
Very good, thank you, and God bless you, and God bless all of your viewers.
Thank you. Firstly, could you explain to us what is your Born Alive bill about? Tell us what does it seek to do, and also what steps is there what that needs to be done for it to progress?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. The full title of the bill is the Human Rights, and then in brackets, Children Born Alive Protection Bill 2021. That bill basically does the job of ensuring that medical practitioners that are present at an abortion where a baby is born alive, that they actually must provide medical treatment and care that's commensurate to the state of that child that's born alive. And so some people have tried to tell a lie about it and said, well, actually the bill would require doctors to resuscitate or keep the heart beating of a child that is born with, half a brain or only the brain stem or something like that. And those tragic circumstances happen. But my bill would do no such thing. It would only say provide palliative care to children that are born alive in those circumstances. But this is the point of the bill. So down one end of a hospital, we could have a 26-week-old baby that's born prematurely under normal sort of circumstances, if you could call a premature birth normal, and it would be provided with all of the care and support that it deserves in order to keep that child alive, because we know even from the age of 21 weeks, although it's rare, children can actually be kept alive if they're born premature. But down the other end of the hospital, you could have a child that's born alive as a result of an abortion or an attempt at an abortion. That child might be 26 weeks. There might be absolutely nothing wrong with that child, or indeed there might be some minor things wrong with it that are essentially superficial or non-life threatening. But because of the circumstances of its birth, it's simply not provided any support. In some circumstances, disgustingly, it's treated as medical wastes. And if you think that this is something that just maybe the odd doctor here or there is doing, let me correct you on that. I'm sure none of your viewers would be thinking that, but the Queensland Health Guidelines, the clinical guidelines on the termination of pregnancy or abortion procedures done within Queensland health facilities, it says to medical practitioners, if in the event a live birth occurs, do not provide life-sustaining treatment. Simply document the time and date of death. So this is systemic, this problem, and it is in breach of international human rights treaties that we've signed up to, such as the International Declaration on the Rights of a Child, which states at Article 6 that every child shall have the right to life, and at Article 24 that every child shall be afforded a provision of health care, particularly with an emphasis on saving the life of that child. So we are, as a nation, in breach of our international commitments that we've made, and this bill seeks to redress that fact.
Wow, so you're saying in the Queensland state, it explicitly states that doctors do not provide life-saving care for these babies?
100%. I've seen the clinical guidelines myself. In fact, I've got a website, www.georgechristensen.com.au/born alive, all one word, born alive. And it actually quotes that section of the clinical guidelines. In fact, there may even be a link to those clinical guidelines on that website that people can avail themselves of. But it is quite confronting, but that's actually the rule in Queensland. And it's a rule in other states as well, whether it's written or unwritten, because that's what actually goes on.
Wow, there you go. Yeah, we'll have a look at the website later on in the share screen later on. But yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. And do you have any statistics for us, Mr. Christensen, on how many babies are born alive after an
Mm.
abortion?
Well, look, it's very difficult to give statistics. What we know is
Mm,
that there's potentially hundreds of these children being born alive as a result or after abortions every year. The reason that I say that it's difficult with the statistics is that the data isn't kept widely on abortions, and
mm,
that tells you a whole lot in itself that the data isn't really kept.
mm,
Um, I got the Parliamentary Library to do some work trying to analyse this, and what they found was that there was evidence in Queensland that there were, dozens of children born alive as a result or
mm,
after abortions every year. In Victoria, there was also a lot. I can't recall the number off the top of my head, but again, that data is up on the website. But across the whole nation, you would have to extrapolate that. And
mm,
I think quite easily you could come to the conclusion that there are hundreds. And that's just with the sketchy data because not everything is reported because there is no requirement to report in most instances. And I think there should be. And in fact, part of my bill
mm,
is a reporting requirement around children that are born alive after abortions. So
mm.
I think that that's important in itself.
Definitely, yes. I don't imagine the Queensland government will be too willing or happy to give those numbers as with their explicit statement for doctors not to provide care for them.
Well, there's no.
Uh,
Can I just say to that that
mm,
I don't think any abortion advocate or abortionist would be happy with
yes.
the idea of having to report what goes on because if we actually knew the true number of abortions across Australia, I think
Mm,
that the whole nation would be horrified.
that's right. Yes, yes. I have some of those numbers now, according to a government institute. But from 2003, 80,000 abortions happen every year in Australia. But that's back in 2003. Would have been many more now, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I got to tell you that. I don't believe that figure.
mm,
I believe it would be much higher than that
yes.
because there is no clear reporting around it. This is
Mm,
what we can best guess from the flimsy data that is available. But what we know is that in Queensland and no doubt in many other states, since abortion on demand was legalised and liberalised. That the numbers have shot through the roof. It is just such a tragedy. And the more abortion on demand that you have, and the more liberalisation of abortion, the more children that are going to be born alive and left to die. But look, let me get this right to the people that I'm speaking to through you.
mm,
I just don't care just about children that are born alive as a result of abortions.
yes.
I also care about those that are dying inside the womb. I think that it is wrong. I think that it is an evil, and it's something that I would like to see stamped out. I am firmly and utterly pro life.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Christensen. I've heard you say that uh, in Parliament as well. You're an outspoken member for that. Thank you very much for raising your voice for the voiceless in that regard. Could you tell
Thank
us
you.
what are the steps that needs to be taken with your bill? What's the next step with your bill?
So it's actually formally a bill before the Parliament, so it
Mm,
could come on for a vote and a debate and a vote at any particular point, but it needs the support really of the government to do that.
mm,
The way that this works in Parliament is that the government of the day controls the schedule of Parliament, the agenda, and so it decides what's being debated, it decides what's being voted on, and unless you have the majority of Parliament in your corner, you actually can't bring on a particular bill for a debate or a vote. You can attempt to do it, but it'll be an attempt that will end in failure. So very much rests
mm,
now on the Morrison government to decide what it wants to do. Having said all of that, it might seem a bit pessimistic, but actually behind the scenes there are many MPs, many senators, and even ministers within the government that have personally expressed to me a desire to see what I'm attempting to do here in the bill become a reality.
Mm.
And in fact, more than that, people like the member for Stirling, Vince Connolly, who seconded the bill, have said to me that they are willing to get a group together to actually take all of the data and information that I have on this
Mm.
and continue to run with it even past this parliament. So this
Mm.
issue is not going to die off. It's going to continue going. It's going to continue being a real issue while we
Mm.
have children being treated as medical waste in hospitals and abortion clinics around this country.
That's right. Yes, I would imagine from hearing from the Morrison government with COVID-19 that they are working to save lives. They're working to save lives, and I would imagine the majority of the government, at least, would agree with that view that they are working to save lives, and that is exactly what this bill is doing. And I'm wondering, why is it taking so long for them to approve this, and why isn't this law already?
Look, it's you make a good point. I mean, we've turned a whole society on its head. We've caused mental health issues, suicides. We've
Mm.
destroyed businesses, all in the name of saving lives that are apparently under threat from a virus. But in the case of children being born alive,
Yeah.
there's no question that even the pro-choice advocate or so-called pro-choice advocate
Yeah.
would have to concede that that child outside of the womb now is an actual human being with all of the rights that are
Mm.
conferred upon human beings and Australians, and yet they're left to die. So why is there so much opposition or reticence
Mm.
to do this within the government? Well, I guess that the reality is there is a segment of the population, there's a large segment of the media that are simply against this. They think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Their reasons are often based on lies. For instance, one lie is this doesn't happen much. Well, even with the flimsy data we have, we know that it happens more than what you would think. Potentially hundreds of cases a year in Australia of this. We also
Mm.
hear that it would force doctors to resuscitate children who just would not be able to survive. And as I've explained before, that is actually exactly what the bill would not require. In fact, the bill actually explicitly states that in a situation where a medical
Mm.
professional rightly deems that a child is just not survivable, that the
Mm.
only thing the bill requires is palliative care. And I think that's the least that we can do
Yeah.
for a young Australian that is extremely vulnerable. So, look, I am yet to hear valid opposition to this, but there is opposition. It obviously gets wrapped up in the issue of abortion itself, and sadly, there's not too many politicians that are willing to run in and tackle that issue.
Mm.
We don't have enough bravery there on that in that regard. So,
Mm.
but can I just say the issue is actually separate to abortion.
Yes,
Abortion is what
definitely.
happens inside the womb. You know, uh,
Yeah.
we are now talking about a living, perhaps breathing, heart beating child outside the womb. That, by all counts, as I said, even the pro-choice advocate would have to concede that child outside the womb now is a human being, an Australian citizen, if it's born in this country, with all of the rights that should be conferred upon human beings and citizens. And part of those rights, as I've said before in the International Declaration on the Rights of a Child, is the right to life and the right to access healthcare, particularly if that healthcare is saving your life. Those are
Mm.
the things that my bill requires.
Simply, it's saving the lives of a baby that is born.
That's right.
It's
That's right.
yeah.
It's not. It's a no-brainer as far as I'm
Yeah, it's
concerned.
common sense. Yeah. Yeah. And could you tell us, we know that state governments are mainly responsible for abortion and
Yeah.
yeah, abortion laws. How does your federal bill
Mm.
affect those laws?
It would override any state laws, and the reason being that Australia as a nation, the Commonwealth, the federal government has signed up to this International Convention on the Rights of a Child. Now, through our constitutional external affairs power, we have the ability with these treaties and declarations and covenants that we sign up to actually say that anything that's going on at a state level that is in breach of these international covenants is null and void. So the federal law would dominate. The precedents for that, there's been a few. One most notably was when Tasmania had its anti-sodomy laws or anti-gay laws in that state. The federal government at the time, I think it was the Keating Labor government, actually invoked international treaties that we had signed up to say that those laws were null and void. So this would be exactly the same.
Well, I hope it does, because yes, like we mentioned, it's just common sense, saving lives. Hope that the state will be on board with that, have no problems with that. And could you tell us, how can we support your bill? So most of our viewers from New South Wales, Queensland, MP, and this is a federal bill. How can we support your bill?
Well, I think that there's two clear ways that you can support the bill. One is, again, going to that website we talked about earlier, georgechristensen.com.au /born alive, BORNALIVE, and sign up your support. Yep.
If you don't mind, I'll just quickly share the screen so you can see that this is the website. And if you scroll down, you can see that that's the bill over there. And if you people would need to enter the details here. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I'm going to be providing all of these details. Perhaps just the name and first name to the Prime Minister and letting him know. Perhaps even the postcode. There's also an option to receive my newsletter. You can see down there. And if you just scroll up for a second again, what you will see is that information out of the International Covenant on the Rights of a Child, or Convention on the Rights of a Child. And then even above that, you will see the information around the numbers that we were able to get in Queensland and Victoria, and the clinical health guidelines, what it actually states there, which I almost said verbatim. That's so right, yes. A bit of information on that website, but you can sign up your support there. More importantly, if you've got a government MP or a government senator in your electorate or state, I would really strongly encourage you and your listeners and your viewers to go and get an appointment with that member of parliament, or federal member of parliament, or senator, and say that you would like them to support this law. Getting down in front of a member of parliament and actually eyeballing them and asking them the question has a lot of power. Every voter has a lot of power at the ballot box, and all the politicians know that. And even if it's a state MP, I guess that state parliaments could actually bring this measure in as well, you know. In fact, when some abortion laws they've tried to liberalise them, what you've had is people try to insert this sort of provision in what I'm doing here as an amendment, and more often than not, it's failed. So you could even approach your state MP to actually see if they would support doing something like this at the state level.
Yes. So going to your website, signing up there, and contacting and physically meeting our MPs
That's right.
Encourage them to support your bill.
Thank you. Yes, that would be great.
Great. Yes. And we in Evangelicals for Life are also proudly pro-life without apology. We know that you are as well. In May this year, lawmakers over at Texas, in the US, have banned abortions for babies with a heartbeat. They're facing some pushback within their own federal government, surprisingly. How can we as Australians also push back against our abortion laws?
Yeah, look, what they've been able to do in Texas, and it looks like it has the backing of the Supreme Court, because they've sort of denied any opposition to it thus far. It's just actually amazing, and it's so inspiring. It does
Mm,
show that continued opposition to these laws which terminate the lives of the most vulnerable
yes.
people, that is, children inside the womb, they are able to be defeated. And so we just need to maintain the rage. You might think it's all tracking in the wrong direction here in Australia, and you'd be right in saying that. Unfortunately, with abortion law in this country, we have seen it head in the wrong direction for far, far too long.
Mm,
But that shouldn't make us give up. It just means that life needs to be defended even that bit more. And so we need to maintain the rage, and we may eventually have outcomes like they've had in Texas. And,
mm,
Godspeed that day. May it come soon. And all I just say is that people just need to get more involved and more active around this, and spread the message further. You know,
that's right.
let other people know about things like this. I've particularly honed in on this issue because I don't
Mm,
know that there's too many people in our community that would say, well, let it die. In
that's
fact,
right.
polling has been done by Cherish Life Queensland, extensive polling, through the same company that does the news poll for the Australian newspaper. And so it's quite reputable. And that polling showed that across every single demographic you could get, that there was majority support for saving the lives of the children that are born alive as a result of
Mm,
abortions. It didn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. They both supported it. It didn't matter whether you lived in New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, Tasmania, WA, wherever.
that's right.
It didn't matter if you were 18 or if you were 65 or 85 or
Mm,
55. People just supported it. And it actually didn't matter whether you voted Liberal, National Party or Labor. There was a bit of a change with the Greens, but even then there were more people that actually in the Greens supported saving those lives than were opposed. So
mm,
this just goes to show this measure has broad support across the Australian community, despite the bleating
mm.
from the pro-abortion crowd and despite the lies from the mainstream media.
Yes, yes. So uh, again, go to Mr. Christensen's website, sign up in that Children Born Alive page, and contact your local MP, federal and state, and arrange a meetup with them in person if that's possible, and raise your voice as Mr. Christian is raising his. Thank you, Mr. Christensen, for very much for that.
Thank you very much, Patrick, and thank you to Evangelicals for Life.
Also, to keep in mind as well, Evangelicals for Life has a connected pregnancy care center called Hope House. If you Google hopehouse.com.au, you'll find a pregnancy care center. If you know anyone who requires support with a woman requiring support with her pregnancy, please let us know. That's hopehouse.com.au. I would love to help. God bless.